Some of you might remember that back in June of 2022, my wife and I collaborated on a video dedicated to Yu-Gi-Oh lore. The point of that video was to show the brilliant ways Yu-Gi-Oh took mythology from real life and integrated it into its gameplay. Our original intention was to do two videos, the first on Western myths and the second on Eastern myths. Unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, which I won't list here, we weren't able to do the second part until now. Before we get to the video proper, I need to say a few things. First, you don't have to watch the first video in order to make sense of this one. Second, I wish to acknowledge that my wife did all the writing and the voiceover for this video, though I did maintain editorial control. I can honestly say that she did a lovely job, and will blow the minds of Yu-Gi-Oh fans and non-fans alike. Plus, her voice is so much nicer to listen to than mine. Now without further ado, here is the unparalleled brilliance of Yu-Gi-Oh's lore, Part 2.
I'd like to begin this video by thanking all of you for your kind comments in the previous Yu-Gi-Oh video and for your request to have an additional video covering more fascinating influences in the Yu-Gi-Oh series. In this video, we will uncover Chinese lore behind many cards in the franchise. Once again, we will focus on some of the decks that are arranged from the relatively new video game, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment for Kazuki Takahashi. Thank you for creating such a masterpiece series that has impacted my life for the better and so many others. I will always remember fondly playing Yu-Gi-Oh! With my sister and going to trading card stores searching for ways to improve our decks. You will be missed and your legacy will continue with all the fans of the series. Let's begin with ancient Chinese history dating around 189 to 280. This period of time covers the Han Dynasty collapse and the era known as the Three Kingdoms era. During the 3rd century, Qin Shou wrote Record of the Three Kingdoms. This laid the historical foundation of the events at this time. More known, however, is the author Lu Guozhan and his fantastical retelling of the events that transpired in his book called Romance of the Three Kingdoms, that was produced much later in the 14th century. This book is considered one of the 4 classic Chinese novels, as well as Water Margin, Journey to the West, and Dream of the Red Chamber. These novels are most significant in the East. Billions of people have been influenced by these works of art akin to the way Homer's works, Don Quixote, The Canterbury Tales, and Shakespearean literature influence Western culture. And with good reason, as this series events are so inspiring and creative that they are retold in the medium of video games, from hack and slash genres such as Dynasty Warriors to the recently released beat-em-up game River City Saga 3 Kingdoms, and to the tactical strategies games like Kessen, Dynasty Tactics, and the Namesake series, and my personal favorite, Romance of the Three Kingdoms. But did you know that our very own Yu-Gi-Oh franchise took inspiration from the Three Kingdoms saga too? I'm going to have to summarize this section quickly, as I could easily talk about Romance of the Three Kingdoms for days and make this section last hours. So let's take a look at this set known as Ancient Warriors in the card pack Legends of Old. All of these cards pay homage to Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Monster cards are key characters in the novel, while spell and trap cards showcase crucial moments that occurred. The Three Kingdoms warring states depicted in the novel were the Kingdoms of Wei that covered the northern plains and the central region of China, the Kingdom of Shu, which took to the southwestern region of China, and the Kingdom of Wu, which were positioned in southeastern China. These are divided in the cards as such, and there is so much symbolism to uncover. Wu is given the element of water, which is quite fitting as Wu was positioned near the Yangtze River, and were well known for naval military prowess. Shu is given the element of wind, which is likely regarding the famous Shu strategist Zhuge Liang, who devised a plan to utilize wind in the pivotal battle known as Chebi, also known as the Battle of Red Cliffs. Wei is given the element of fire, which may be in reference to the fire attacks involved in the Battle of Chebi as well. Looking at the Wei fire cards, we have the leader Cao Cao, represented in the card Ambitious Cao Di. During this time period, it was traditional for men to have given names as well as courtesy names. In some circumstances, women might have courtesy names that were only given after marriage. Their given names could be used by elders or themselves, whereas if you were born around the same generation or in writing, the courtesy name was preferred. Also, in Chinese, the family name goes first. As an example, Cao Cao, whose forename and surname are the same, also has the courtesy name of Cao Mengde. For some creative flair, perhaps, the Yu-Gi-Oh series took these characters' courtesy names and shortened them, as with Salmungda, to Salde. I cannot give Yu-Gi-Oh enough credit for all the symbolism placed in many others. So not only are the leaders of the three kingdoms represented, but also well-known tacticians and warriors in their services. The other Wei cards include the warrior card named Fearsome Zhongyuan, whose given name was Zhongliao and courtesy name was Wenyuan, as well as the tactician card Deceptive Zhuan, whose given name was Zhizi and courtesy name was Wenhui. Notice again how Zhang Liao and Zhizi are depicted with shortened versions of their courtesy names as Zhang Yuan instead of Zhang Wenhuan and Zhu Wen instead of Zhu Wen. This trend continues with all these cards. Moving on to the Kingdom of Shu, you will see that an interesting comparison to the book arises. Even though the Kingdom of Shu is the first to fall of the three, the Kingdom of Shu gets special treatment among the three sets. Wei and Wu each have 3 cards, one for the leader, one for tactician, and one for renowned warrior. Shu has 5 cards in total for monster cards, and most spell and trap cards revolve around events with Shu. Remember, the original history of the Three Kingdoms era was written by Chen Shou. Shou grew up in the Kingdom of Shu. Perhaps for this reason, amongst others, Shu is depicted as the protagonist. At any rate, the leader card of Shu is called Victorious Liu Xuan, again a play off his courtesy name, Liu Xuande. Notice in the artwork he is wielding dual swords, which he was known for. In regards to Shu warrior monster cards, we have Loyal Guan Yun and Valiant Zhongde. Guan Yun, better known as Guan Yu in Romance of the Three Kingdoms, is one of the most recognizable and beloved characters in the book, aside for another Shu vassal named Zhuge Liang. Guan Yu is depicted in the Yu-Gi-Oh artwork with his classic green war attire and displays his recognizable long beard and signature weapon known as the Green Dragon Crescent Blade. Zhongde, better known as Zhongfei in Romance of the Three Kingdoms, is shown as well with his classic serpent spear. Next, we will cover the tactician card for Shu, who is none other than Zhuge Liang, whose card name appears as Ingenious Zhuge Kong in Yu-Gi-Oh! In this depiction, he has his signature crane feather fan, and the imagery of leaves scattering around him further provokes the association with wind, which we will cover more shortly. The third kingdom is the Kingdom of Wu, and the leader card is named Masterful Sun Mao, after the first emperor of Wu, Sun Xuan. The other cards are military generals of Wu, Lu Tzu and Zhou Yu, represented as eccentric Lu Jing and graceful Zhu Gong. There are 2 other monster cards from Yu-Gi-Oh! I'd like to highlight that were based on the events during the collapse of the Han Dynasty before the era of the Three Kingdoms. These 2 cards were quite infamous, and I feel have the best symbolism and translation to Yu-Gi-Oh! They are, first of all, appropriately symbolized with the element of dark. They are Dongshui and Lu Bu. Dongshui usurped power from the Han, seizing the capital and using the emperor as a figurehead to assert his corruption. He was known to rule through terror, torturing his enemies and hosting extravagant banquets for his high-class supporters without a care for the plight of his poorer citizens. He eventually was betrayed by his adopted son, who was the previously mentioned Lu Bu, and killed. His card is named Savage Dong Ying, which is the first card that has a misspelled surname. It could be for the sake of an English translation to Don over Dong to have a mafia-like feel for the card perhaps. I'm truly unsure why this occurred. If any of you have an explanation for this, I would be interested in knowing. Next we have Lu Bu's card, Rebellious Lu Feng. This card does an exceptional translation of the portrait of Lu Bu. He rides his famous steed, Red Hair, which was said to be the fastest horse, capable of traveling 1,000 li, or Chinese miles in a day. He also wields his famous Chinese polearm called Fengshui Haji, which translates to Sky Piercer. Not only is the artwork spot on, let's read the description. Cannot be normal summoned, set. Must be special summoned from your hand by controlling the highest attack Ancient Warriors monster on the field, even if it's tied. You can only special summon Ancient Warriors Rebellious Lu Feng once per turn this way. Once per turn, during the main phase, quick effect. you can destroy the one face-up monster your opponent controls with the highest attack, your choice if tied. Also, you cannot activate monster effects the turn you activate this effect, except Ancient Warrior monsters. Once per turn, during the end phase, if your opponent controls a monster with the highest attack on the field, even if tied, give control of this card to your opponent. This is a brilliant translation to the card game. Lu Bu was notorious for defecting for personal gain. He was bribed by Dong Zhuo with gifts including red hair to kill his adopted father, Ding Yuan, then later betrayed Dong Zhuo, who later became his foster father and killed him too. Here's a video of Shu warrior Zhang Fei taunting Lu Bu and saying it best. The spell and trap cards in this group reference key events from the novel with these characters we've discussed. Here is a spell card that references what we discussed with Lu Bu betraying Dong Zhuo, appropriately called Deception and Betrayal. Let's cover some key events from the Battle of Cherbi. This battle was crucial for all parties involved. At this point, Wei had the largest military force, and to obtain hegemony, Cao Cao needed to obtain the province of Jing, which was positioned along the Yangtze River. Through the diplomacy of Liu Bei's strategist Zhuge Liang and Sun Xuan's advisor Lu Su and Zhou Yu, an alliance developed from the two weaker forces against Wei. Though they had the advantage in numbers, Wei forces were less adept at naval military and ultimately lost the battle due to several stratagems involving fire attacks against them. There are several aspects of these events that were fictionalized that led to the victory in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms novel, including Zhuge Liang's plan to borrow arrows from the enemy. On a foggy night, he led ships out to feign an ambush attack on Cao Cao's forces. They shot arrows at the ships in a great volley, only to be outwitted as the ships were decoys with hay attached to draw in arrows to later be reused against them in the coming battle. Also, Zhuge Liang performed magic at an altar to change the course of the wind to aid the fire attacks. Yet another reason why Shu is represented by the wind element. Alright, moving on, we will cover 2 more card packs with Chinese history and myths intertwined, but to a lesser degree as I am more versed in the Three Kingdoms era. The next card pack is called Guardians of Fire. Remember how we mentioned that the last deck we covered was inspired by one of the Chinese classic novels? This deck is heavily inspired by another of the novels called The Water Margin. The Water Margin is quite the perplexing novel. It has several different names, could have been written by several different people, and had many different versions with varying chapter amounts. It essentially depicts the journey of 108 outlaws who rebel against the Song dynasty at Mount Leon. Later, they are awarded a pardon and acquiesce to the government's order to aid the resistance of other invaders, including the Lao dynasty. I strongly recommend the YouTuber Cool History Bros if you are interested in an in-depth analysis of the Water Margin and other Chinese history and tales. For our purpose in this video, we will focus on how the novel is represented in the YuGiOh cards. The monster cards in the Guardians of Fire are all based on the 108 heroes of the book, except for 4 cards that are other important characters in the book. The cards are also given an animal spirit, star, and flame color associated with them. There is much symbolism in the colors, stars, and animals associated with these characters. Let's look at a great example of this. The card Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Dragon is based on Shijin, nicknamed the 9-Tattooed Dragon, as he literally has 9 dragons tattooed on him. Notice how in the YuGiOh depiction, he has 9 dragons emanating from him. Next, we'll look at one of the ultra-rare cards, Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Tiger King. This card is based on Song Jiang, who led the 108 outlaws during the events of the Water Margin. He is ranked number 1 out of the 108 outlaws. Before we go on, it is important to note the number 108 significance. In several Eastern religions, including Taoism, Buddhism, and Hinduism, this number is sacred. For instance, prayer beads typically have 108 beads. Another example would be that in Buddhism, it is said that there are 108 earthly temptations to overcome to reach enlightenment. Early in the Water Margin, a minister unleashes 108 demons from a Taoist temple that were sealed under a Bijou monument, which is a Chinese dragon with the shell of a tortoise, We'll get back to this in the next card pack. Anyway, symbolically, the unleashed demons are scattered outward and reincarnated as the 36 heavenly spirits, 72 earthly demons, which make up the 108 outlaws. Back to Songjiang, he is again represented as the first star, the leader star of the 36 heavenly spirits. His spirit animal in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the white tiger, and this too has symbolism as the tiger is highly revered in Chinese and during the Han Dynasty was considered as the king of all beasts. This animal is so highly exalted, it is included as one of the 4 guardians of Chinese constellations as a white tiger and represented the cardinal direction west, along with the azure dragon of the east, black turtle of the north, and the vermilion bird of the south. One last thing before moving on to the next card pack. Remember how I said water margin has many different names? Well, in Japanese, the name translates to Suikoden, and the video game series Suikoden is actually loosely based on the water margin. I grew up playing those games and had no idea about this reference. The Suikoden games are all known for having 108 playable characters known as the 108 Stars of Destiny. The last card pack we will cover in this video is called Dragon Spirit. There are 2 main card types in this card pack called the Tinyi and the Yongsing. The Tinyi draw inspiration from Hinduism and the 7 main chakra. The Yongsing card type draw from the legend of the Dragon King in China. In this ancient mythology, the Dragon King or Dragon God had 9 sons from different animals, creating hybrid-like dragons. The likeness of these 9 dragon sons are quite prevalent in Chinese culture, and you can see monuments for them throughout China. We briefly mentioned one of the 9 dragons earlier in the water margin tale, when the 108 demons were released under a Bijou monument at the Taoist temple. According to the Yu-Gi-Oh fandom, Yongsing was likely from the Chinese Yongsing to avoid issues that might arise from pronunciation, and the phrase Yongsing may mean positive or masculine. Let's see how this card pack displays some of the 9 dragons. We have shown some images of Bijou. Here is Bijou's depiction in the trading card game. This tortoise-like dragon can usually be found in temples and gravesites. Next, we will discuss Bi'an, the tiger dragon. It was known that Bi'an could look into the souls of mortals and tell the righteous from the wicked. He can be found residing at courthouses and prisons. Here is a depiction of Bi'an near the entrance of a prison in Henan. This is Yu-Gi-Oh's depiction of Bi'an. All 9 of the dragon sons are covered in this deck, but we will showcase one more before ending the video. Yazu usually is depicted as a mix between a jackal and a dragon or a wolf and a dragon. It was said to be aggressive and liked conflicts. It is usually depicted on swords' hilts and other weapon ornamentations. Here is Yu-Gi-Oh's depiction of Yazu. That does it for this video. I hope you enjoyed learning about Chinese history and mythology and this exploration of Yu-Gi-Oh cards. A quick note, the exceptional music in the background is from the video game series Romance of the Three Kingdoms 10 and 11 by the composer Yoshihiro Ike. Much like Final Fantasy having a huge selection of numerical games, Romance of the Three Kingdoms currently has 14 main titled games. And in my humble opinion, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are the best Romance of the Three Kingdoms games and Final Fantasy games to start out for newcomers to both series. Thank you so much for watching, and a big thanks to Max for letting me share this video on his channel.